Drop the bass.
Amnesia is a horror game from Frictional Games, whose previous titles were the Penumbra games. So, they're no stranger to scary games. And they really hit the nail on the head with this one. It is, without a doubt, the scariest game I have ever played.
Yes.
So me and Mindy played the game, and Brandon, you just watched a playthrough of the game.
Before the game was all such a big hype and it was still, first coming out, I decided, this would be kind of a cool game to watch, not play or buy. So I just decided to watch a walkthrough of it. Lo and behold, the next week or month, I don't remember what it was, everyone started to get into this, like nonstop. And I already watched the walkthrough, so I already know the entire game. So I thought there would be no point of actually buying it because it wouldn't be as scary. Watching it was kind of scary too, because, jeez, I was on the edge half the time.
Not only did you save $20 by not purchasing the game, you also saved money on several pairs of pants.
It was a pretty good game. It kept you questioning things all the way through.
As implied by the game's title, you start off with Amnesia and discover a letter you wrote to yourself, kickstarting the story and the beginning of your dark descent. Amnesia is possibly the oldest trick in the video game book, but in Amnesia's game's case, it's used to great effect, being carefully woven into the story. The story is told mostly through excellently voiced notes from diaries and letters you find lying around the castle, and flashbacks that happen as you wander, giving you glimpses into the events that led you to where you are now.
19th of August, 1839. I wish I could ask how much you remember. Alexander, is it inside the castle?
In a manner of speaking. Come, bring the lamp. You've been to the refinery, have you not?
They're spaced nicely so that you can discover what's going on, and while you do, you're driven to go just a little further.
I honestly thought it was a pretty good story. I was questioning it about halfway through it until I finally actually started to understand what was going on.
It is a little bit like a mystery at first, where you don't understand the whole thing until it gets about halfway through.
I found the storyline a bit confusing, and so I didn't really like it at first.
Did you get to like it?
Well, it's one of those things that as you're playing, you're like, I have absolutely no idea why I am doing this because they haven't given me enough information to make if it was real life, I probably wouldn't have been doing the things I was doing because I didn't have enough information.
Well, the guy told you. You yourself told you what to do. He didn't specifically give you a reason, mostly because he didn't want you to remember.
Yeah, I felt it was a little hard a couple of times. Most of the time, it was fine. I knew what was going on. But there was a few times where it was like, I have absolutely no idea what I'm doing right now. I know what I'm supposed to be doing, but I have no idea why. Other than that, it was pretty good, though. Especially by the end, you pretty much figured out. I still am not 100% sure on the whole story, but it was still really good.
I suppose if you want to, you could play through the entire game without reading any of the notes. But aside from telling the story, they also give you hints and instructions on the puzzles.
That was my other problem.
Your other problem?
If they weren't read to me, I didn't read them.
Well, that might explain why you got lost, because there was some important information in those other notes.
Yeah, I think so. I read some of them. The problem is I actually did read them, but halfway through, I realized that some of them were longer than a page, and I hadn't noticed there's like a button to get out of it and a button to like keep reading.
Mm-hmm.
And so for half the game, I was only reading half the notes, half of what the note said. That was my real problem, I think, maybe. But a lot of the time I did skim or, fast
But
read.
I'm sure a lot of people do that though too.
Yeah, it's not really important unless you're having trouble with the puzzles.
Mm-hmm.
Although I thought it was quite an interesting story.
Yeah.
Overall, the story is a driving mystery that serves to involve you in the world emotionally, further deepening the overall experience.
Agreed.
The puzzles in the game give off the vibe of an adventure game. Find these chemicals and this mixture to make this concoction to break down this wall that will get you to the next area. It's a fairly standard formula, but the game draws you in so much that it doesn't feel standard. It's important to note that there are no weapons in this game. If you want to survive, you have to rely entirely on your wits and on occasion your feet.
I don't know. There's something about a game where if you don't have a weapon, you just get frustrated and you just want to. I don't know.
That was one of the problems I had with the game.
No weapons?
The fact that you can't
Do anything besides
use
hide.
certain things. Yeah, it's like there's so many times where there'd be like a knife on the table or
Or a hammer
a shovel
or
or something, and you can't pick it up. And the same thing with there'd be like candles that you can't pick up. It's like, okay, if I seriously was in this game, I would be grabbing a candle because they burn forever, but you just can't use them.
See, I think they put the you can't kill them in there because it actually does give it a little bit more fear. Like, you actually have to run and hide from these things. You can't actually fight them. That's my only reasoning why, because in their first 2 games that they made, you can actually kill the animals and stuff like that.
That is true. I think they were going for something different in this one. And I think, Mindy, the reason that they didn't let you pick up the candles is, I mean, even though you could in real life if you were actually doing this, but light and dark and Amnesia kind of act as elements of gameplay. It's always a balance between the two. If you're going to be in a single area for a while, you can light candles and torches, but you only have a limited number of tinder boxes with which to light them. You also have a lantern that you can carry around, but it eats up oil pretty quickly, and there's only so much oil scattered about the castle. And the advantages are, if you stay in the light, it clears your head, but you make yourself visible to the many horrors lurking throughout the castle. Creeping through the darkness makes you less noticeable, but your sanity quickly deteriorates. There is a meter to show you that. If you stay in the dark for long or witness unsettling events, then your sanity will go down. And you could gain it back by solving puzzles and making progress, as well as staying in the light. I thought the pacing in this game was also really good, because the areas are separated quite nicely. Some areas are relentlessly scary, but afterwards you are usually rewarded with a sanctuary, a place where you can stay in the light for a while without fear of monsters.
A slower paced area.
Just enough to compose yourself to embark on the next part of your journey.
Yeah, but you always got to keep on your guard because you have no idea where these things are patrolling and stuff like that.
That is true. The monsters in the game seem kind of not exactly random because they come in at specific parts, but afterwards they sort of wander around.
To a point, though, they are. Like when we started, me and you were playing at the same point, and you had a monster, and you were like, oh my goodness, when you come back to this part in the game, because you were slightly ahead of me, you're like, watch out, there's a monster, but there never was for me.
Yeah, that happens at certain points in the game. Some of them are fixed, some of them are scary, which adds to the uncertainty and makes it even more scary.
It also has to do with how long you actually stay in a certain spot, because they do patrol and sometimes you won't even see them.
If they see you, you can run and hide from them in a dark area or a closet or something.
I'm gonna give you music cues too. Help you out a little bit better.
And by help you out,
When they're there and when they're not.
you mean scare you to death.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, but those music things can be misleading though too.
That is true. So, let me start this off by saying, oh my goodness, this is the scariest game I've ever played. The entire game is designed to draw you into the game world. Rather than relying on cheap scares, the game makes everything scary by convincing you that you are this character, wandering through a dark castle. It messes with your mind, but in the most subtle of ways. Everything from the graphics to the sound and the music, the quick glimpses of a shadow moving in the dark, and the voices that may or may not be in your head, make this an experience like no other. Generally, I would play this game in 5 to 20 minute intervals just because I would glimpse a monster out of the corner of my eye, run and hide and refuse to play anymore for a day or so.
Oh yes, the majority of the game. Towards the end, it actually seemed less scary, and I don't know if it's the fact that I had gotten used to it, or if it was because you were starting to like see the monsters more like up close and in the light than in the beginning, so you kind of knew what you were up against in a way. So
You were kind of figuring out more, like there was less uncertainty as the story unfolded.
Yeah.
Although the game has a way of lulling you into a false sense of security just when you've gone for quite a while without seeing or hearing anything scary, You turn around and there's a nightmare staring you in the face. But even more than what the game shows you is what it doesn't show you. There's almost no violence in the game at all, aside from your own death, should you fail to outrun the monstrosities. But any acts are described or heard in flashbacks, letting your own imagination horrify you.
The scariest part in the entire game was when you had to come across the water monster for me, because you can't see it and all you hear is it splashing in the water, chasing after you. And I just, that was the worst part of the game for me.
Not only that, but the music that plays in that part is terrifying.
Yeah, so you have like no idea what you're up against, kind of a feeling horrifying.
The graphics, while not mind-blowing, suit the game perfectly, I think. The lighting engine designed for Amnesia does its job extremely well. The whole castle is teeming with atmosphere. There are points in the game where it's so dark that you can only see a few feet in front of you by lantern light. But also open cavernous areas and well-lit areas. Well lit for Amnesia anyways. The graphics make the whole game world that much more believable and that much more frightening.
Agreed.
Would say the dark areas were a little bit, I don't know, like when you don't have your lantern on, they got a little weird, but then they play it into with what your mind's doing, so I think maybe that was a little bit on purpose. Because you're like,
Your eyes
to go
do
on.
adjust to the dark.
Well, but what I mean is, it doesn't look as good in the dark, but I think it has a lot to do with what's going on in your brain. Because you start to like freak out.
And the screen gets all warped and
Yeah.
you start seeing things. As good as the visuals are, the sound and music take the cake. The music is calm and peaceful when it needs to be, and at other times panic-inducing. At times it hits your ears in just the right, horrible way, making your skin crawl, and perfectly complementing the grotesque and eerie nature of the castle. The sound as well. There is nothing quite as panic-inducing as hearing two pairs of feet racing through the water instead of just one. All the voices in the game fit the mood perfectly as well.
What's happening? Oh, it feels like my chest is going to burst. Oh. My God, Wilhelm, do something!
I think they did pretty good with the sound. It gives it that much more fear.
That's probably what makes it scary. I had a point in the game where, for some reason, my game wasn't working right, so I wasn't getting any sound, and I played through this really scary part during that time without having to quit because I didn't get as scared as if I would have had sound.
It really isn't quite the same without the sound.
No, it's really not.
Overall, Amnesia is not so much a game as it is an experience. The world simultaneously piques curiosity and scares the living daylights out of you. It's a tremendous effort for indie developer Frictional Games. The game is not flawless, but the simple puzzle adventure horror formula is so drenched in atmosphere and tension that it's hard to care when you're being chased down a hallway by some unknown abomination. I'm gonna have to give this game a 9.7. Brandon?
Probably a 9.5.
Mindy?
9.5 or 9-ish.